Imagine a world where a simple Sunday drive could turn into a nightmare of flying knives. In the early 1900s, that world was real. Cars were incredible new machines of freedom, but they hid a terrible secret. The windshield in front of you wasn't a shield, it was a wuspin. Made from ordinary window glass, any small crash turned it into a storm of razor-sharp shards. The newspapers of the time were filled with horrific stories. People weren't just hurt in accidents, they were permanently scarred, their faces and lives torn apart by glass. It was a silent killer, and nobody had an answer. But one day, in a cluttered Paris laboratory, the answer literally fell to the floor. It came not from a grand plan, but from one of the most beautiful and profitable mistakes in history. This is the story of how a clumsy chemist, a forgotten flask, and a world war came together to create the glass that wouldn't break, saving millions of lives, including maybe your own. We're diving deep into the incredible journey of laminated safety glass. You use this invention every single day. When you tap your car's windshield, you're touching an idea born from a simple accident in 1903. But do you know the name of the man who fought for it? Do you know why car makers called it too expensive before a war proved it was priceless? Today, we're going beyond the glass. We're going to reveal the hidden drama, the struggle, and the ultimate triumph of an invention that changed what it means to be safe. This is the InventIQ, and this is the story of the glass that wouldn't break. The hidden killer on wheels. Picture a dimly lit workshop in 1903. The air smells of oil, leather, and ambition. The first automobiles are chugging down cobblestone streets. They are loud, they are thrilling, and they are incredibly dangerous. We talk about the lack of seatbelts or airbags, but the most immediate threat was right in front of the driver's eyes. The early windshields were just glass, the exact same fragile material you'd find in a kitchen window. Can you imagine hitting a small bump and having your windshield explode into your face? That's exactly how people felt back then. Even a minor collision at low speed could be life-altering. The glass would shatter into long, dagger-like pieces, causing horrific lacerations. Doctors struggled to treat these injuries. A young woman's face permanently disfigured, a father blinded, a child cut by a storm of invisible knives. This wasn't a rare risk, it was an expected outcome of a car crash. The public was desperate for a solution, but inventors were stumped. How can you keep glass clear enough to see through, yet strong enough to not become a weapon? In the middle of this crisis, one man's mind was about to connect the dots in the most unlikely way. And it all started with a clumsy mistake. The clumsy mistake that changed everything. Our setting shifts now from a dangerous road to a cluttered laboratory in Paris. Here we find our hero, Édouard Bénédictus. And calling him just a chemist doesn't do him justice. Édouard was a true Renaissance man, a French painter, a composer, a bookbinder, and a textile designer. His mind was a fireworks display of creativity. One fateful day in 1903, Édouard was up on a ladder in his lab, reaching for some reagents on a high shelf. As he stretched, he accidentally knocked a glass flask off the shelf. He watched it tumble to the floor. He heard the sharp crack of breaking glass. He braced for the chaos of scattered shards. But chaos never came. He climbed down and looked at the floor. The flask had cracked, a beautiful starry pattern like Bohemian crystal. But it hadn't shattered. It was still holding its shape. The pieces were clinging together as if held by an invisible force. Intrigued, he examined the flask. He then realized the magic trick. This flask had previously held a liquid plastic called cellulose nitrate. The liquid had evaporated over time, leaving a thin, transparent, and incredibly strong film coating the inside. This invisible layer was holding all the broken pieces in place. Many of us would have just thought, that's weird, swept up the mess and moved on. But Bénédictus had a scientist's eye. He carefully picked up the flask, labeled it, and put it back on the shelf. He didn't know it yet, but he had just held the future of global safety in his hands. the darkest night, and a painful spark. For a time, that magical flask just sat on a shelf. But one evening, his mind was triggered by tragedy. He was reading a Paris newspaper, and his eye was caught by a horrifying story. 2 young women had been in a terrible car accident. They didn't die from the impact. They were severely, brutally cut by the flying shards of the shattered windshield. The glass had turned on them. I was, after my dinner, deep in thought about these 2 accidents, Bénédictus later recounted, when suddenly, without any preparation of any kind, the image of my jar was superimposed, palely lit in superimposition on the frieze, always in motion, of life. In that moment, his 2 separate worlds collided. The memory of the unbroken, starry flask flashed in his mind. He saw the answer. If a simple, dried plastic film inside a flask could stop it from shattering, why couldn't a plastic film be deliberately placed between 2 sheets of glass for a car? This one idea almost destroyed him with its urgency. He rushed back to his laboratory and worked through the entire night. He wasn't just a chemist anymore, he was a man possessed. By the end of the following day, he had created the world's first sheet of laminated safety glass. He took 2 sheets of glass and bonded them together with a thin core of celluloid. It was a glass-plastic sandwich. He named it Triplex. If the glass broke, the fragments would stick to the plastic layer like a fly in a spider web. It wouldn't stop a crash, but it would stop the glass from fighting you. A revolution was born in a single sleepless night.
The frustrating silence, an invention nobody wanted. You would think the world would beat a path to his door. You'd be wrong. After years of perfecting his process, Bénédictus finally filed a patent for his laminated glass in 1909. In 1911, full of hope, he founded the Triplex Glass Company and started shopping his life-saving invention to automobile manufacturers. He showed them how his glass stopped shards. He told them about the tragedies, the scarred faces, the lives lost to ordinary glass. And their answer? A collective shrug. The automobile industry showed itself to be completely uninterested. The reason came down to one thing: cost. The car makers of the era didn't want to hear about safety. They were building exciting new toys for the rich and adventurous. Adding this expensive triplex glass meant cutting into their profits. They told Bénédictus his invention was just too expensive. They chose money over lives. It was a deeply frustrating time for the inventor. Imagine that. You've given the world a way to stop a gruesome epidemic of glass injuries, and the very people who could solve the problem say, "No thanks, it costs too much." For a few years, it looked like his breakthrough would become just another forgotten patent, collecting dust in a Paris office. But a terrible storm was brewing in Europe, and ironically, the horror of war was about to prove that safety had no price tag.
The savior in the trenches, how war proved the glass's worth. In 1914, the world went dark. The First World War erupted, and a new, terrifying weapon was introduced to the battlefield: poison gas. The silent, choking clouds of chlorine and mustard gas turned soldiers' breath into fire and blinded them. The first gas masks were rushed to the front lines, a desperate defense against this new horror. But they had a fatal flaw. The eyepieces were made of ordinary glass or brittle mica. They shattered from the smallest impact in the chaos of the trenches, instantly exposing a soldier to the gas. A broken lens meant a death sentence. Military leaders were frantic for a solution, and someone, somewhere, remembered Bénédictus's strange, unshatterable glass. Suddenly, the invention that was too expensive for a Cadillac became priceless for a soldier. Laminated glass was quickly adapted for the eyepieces of gas masks. The triplex lenses, a sandwich of glass and cellulose, would crack but would never shatter. They held together, protecting the soldier's eyes and his life. This was the big break. All the factories that had been making luxury windshields for the few cars on the road were repurposed. They now churned out thousands of life-saving lenses for the Allied forces. The war that brought so much horror did one thing for this invention.
It proved its absolute value. It showed the world, and especially the car industry, that Bénédictus's glass wasn't a costly extra. It was a necessary, reliable, life-saving technology. The final, stubborn wall of resistance was about to be broken down, not by a scientist, but by an industrial titan who almost became a victim himself. The industrial giant and a personal reckoning. Enter Henry Ford. By the late 1910s, Ford had already put the world on wheels with his Model T. But his cars, like all others, still used ordinary, dangerous glass. The story goes that around 1918, Henry Ford himself was involved in a minor accident. He wasn't seriously hurt, but he was deeply, profoundly shaken by the flying shards of glass that filled his car. He realized in that moment that he had been putting millions of his own customers at risk. He was selling cars that contained a hidden killer. Ford, a man of absolute conviction, made a decision. He wouldn't wait for a law to force his hand. He committed his company to making the switch. Just 1 year later, in 1919, Ford Motor Company became the first car manufacturer in the world to implement laminated safety glass on a mass production scale, starting with the iconic Model T. This was the turning point. It was the moment safety glass went from a niche idea to a global standard. And here's an interesting twist. While Bénédictus was the inventor, the global race to perfect safety glass was on. In 1905, an English solicitor named John Crew Wood had even filed his own patent for laminated glass using Canada balsam. Later, in 1927, Canadian chemists Howard W. Matheson and Frederick W. Skira would invent polyvinyl butyrol, or PVB, a new, stronger, non-yellowing plastic interlayer that we still use in windshields today. The Ford Motor Company had become so committed to the technology that by 1927 it opened its own glassworks and made safety glass standard equipment in all its vehicles. Other giants like Cadillac quickly followed, making it standard on all windows by 1928. The age of the glass knife was over. The age of the safety sandwich had begun, driven by a man who refused to let his customers face a danger he had felt himself. From a single flask to a world of glass. The story didn't end in Henry Ford's factories. It was just the first chapter. Today, the great-grandchild of Bénédictus's flimsy celluloid film is everywhere, and it's doing jobs he could have never imagined. That's the modern impact of his beautiful mistake. Walk through any modern city. When you see a towering skyscraper whose glass facade gleams in the sun, much of that is laminated glass. It's not just for safety from a crash. In hurricane zones, laminated glass is a legal requirement. It can be hit by a flying 2x4 traveling at 34 miles per hour and still hold together, protecting the building and keeping the storm outside. Think about security. When you walk into a bank and stand in front of the teller, that protective barrier is a direct descendant of the Triplex gas mask lens. By using multiple layers of glass and plastic, you get bullet-resistant glass that absorbs the energy of a bullet, with the plastic layers holding the fragments. Even your own comfort is shaped by this invention. A laminated windshield doesn't just protect you. The PVB plastic layer blocks 95 to 99% of harmful ultraviolet or UV rays, protecting your skin and your car's interior during that long summer drive. An accident from 1903 now protects you from the sun, the storm, and the unthinkable. Five mind-blowing facts to see the world differently. Before we wrap up, let's cement your genius status with 5 mind-blowing facts you can share at your next dinner party. Fact number 1. A 20-year head start on the law. Henry Ford made safety glass standard in 1927, but it wasn't mandatory for all cars in the United Kingdom until 1937. For 20 years, the decision to protect you was a choice, and it saved countless lives before the government ever stepped in. Fact number 2. It can stop a bullet, but it wasn't designed to. By layering multiple sheets of glass in PVB, the principle of triplex can be scaled up to create transparent armor. Bulletproof glass works on the exact same principle as Bénédictus's accident. Plastic layers catch the dangerous fragments. Fact number 3. The UV shield you never knew you had.
That layer of PVB in your car's windshield isn't just for safety, it's an incredible filter. It blocks nearly all of the sun's harmful UV radiation, which is why you don't get a sunburn while driving, but you might if you leave your arm resting on the open window for an hour. Fact number 4, a silent world. Did you know laminated glass can dramatically reduce noise? The viscoelastic plastic layer works as an incredible sound dampener. In a noisy city, laminated windows can cut sound transmission by almost half compared to ordinary glass, turning a chaotic street into a peaceful sanctuary. And fact number 5, the most expensive windshield in history might be invisible. Today's most advanced augmented reality windshields are still made of laminated glass. They project navigation, speed, and safety alerts directly onto the glass, making you a fighter pilot in your own car. The technology has changed, but the silent, invisible layer of protection that started it all, that plastic sandwich from 1903, remains exactly the same. A crack that saved the world. So here we are, at the end of our journey. From a clumsy chemist on a ladder, to a soldier in a gas-filled trench, to you, sitting safely behind your windshield today. When I learned this story, I realized something profound. We chase perfection, but history's greatest leaps often come from our mistakes. Édouard Bénédictus wasn't trying to save the world. He wasn't trying to revolutionize transportation. He just dropped a glass flask. And yet, his tiny accident became an invisible, life-saving shield that protects billions of people every single day. A single moment of curiosity, the choice to look at a broken flask and ask, why, changed the course of history. It turned a weapon of flying knives into a guardian. The glass that wouldn't break didn't just change cars, it changed our entire relationship with the modern world, making our homes stronger, our cities quieter, and our daily lives immeasurably safer. And now, I turn it over to you. What's the next invention you want us to uncover? Is there a simple object in your life with a dramatic, hidden past that you're dying to know about? Write it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story inspired you, if you want to look at your windshield with a little more wonder, smash that like button with the force of a non-laminated glass pane. And make sure you subscribe to TheInventIQ and ring that notification bell. We've got a whole world of incredible stories to explore together. Don't let the algorithms hide them from you. Join us. Until next time, stay curious and never underestimate the power of a beautiful mistake.